Could you explain a little bit about your technique with the cinematographer?
Sure. So the cinematographer's name is Bradford Young, and he actually designed and built his own lights for this film. And what we wanted to do with the camera is really like use it to heighten the characterizations. So Alike is a chameleon, therefore she's constantly painted by the light around her. In the club she's purple, in the bus she's green, at home she's pink. And then we see her more and more in white light as she comes into herself and understands who she is. And similarly, a lot of the angles we use on her profile and silhouette, because she's hiding, she's peeking, and the angles become a little more frontal as she comes into herself, and as well as the size of the shots actually. So like, you know, she's cocooned in this claustrophobic environment, so it's very tight initially. When finally on the roof, where she's free, you know, it's like the widest shot of the film. So we really wanted to use the camera to help tell the story on different levels and to also show who the characters were.
When they use the camera in that way, sometimes she's further away, sometimes she's closer, especially a lot of times when you're finding out about yourself and your sexuality in the film, she's really close and moving around. What was that like for you guys as actors?
I mean, it was fine for me. You know, it was, someone asked, you know, did it feel like it was like encroaching on me? But it just felt, I don't know, just kind of lend itself to this, you know, just covering and hiding.
Yeah, I think, you know, pretty much as an actress, you learn how to block out the camera, you know, so the camera just doesn't exist. You know, you're so focused on what it is that you're doing, the story that you're telling, you're like, you know, in that.
What was it like being in a film where you had to portray somebody who you were working very closely with, and in fact you had worked with before on the short?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because I don't think of it as like super semi-autobiographical, because it's based on Dee's, but it never felt like I was having to portray Dee at any stage of her life.
What was it like to put yourself into such a dramatic role?
It was amazing for me. It was such a wonderful challenge that I had been thirsting for many, many years. So I'll be forever grateful to Dee for giving me the opportunity to express myself in that kind of way.
How did you come to the part? How did you find out about it?
My manager, she was my agent at the time, she sent me the script. And I read that script and I was like, I was in love. I was in love with this movie. It was just so beautiful and so powerful, and it just touched my heart, especially in light of all the young children that have been killing themselves lately, committing suicide because of being bullied or you know, not having a safe place to go. It just really moved me on a very emotional level, and I was like, I need to be a part of this. I really need to be a part of this. So thankfully, my manager had a connection. She knew the casting director. They were friends. So she begged her to see me. Then she had a conversation with Dee and Nikisa, and like I said, thankfully they were open enough to at least let Kim Wayans, the wacky comedian, come in and read, and I got the part.
Yeah. Kim blew it out the water. I mean, we've seen a lot of Audreys, but nobody could really find that core, that loneliness, that vulnerability, and Kim captured that perfectly. So yeah, we were lucky to have her. I'm glad that she came in.
When you were shooting, I understand that there were a lot of times that you had to suddenly change what you were doing. What was that like for you as a director in terms of you had to suddenly, oh, got to go over here, and what was that for you as actresses?
But if we had scenes we're going to do for a day, it might be okay, you know, let's get this shot instead because the light is here. So we would just kind of, you know, go with the flow, and we all worked as a team. So I thought, you know, it was fine for me, and we really tried to, you know, make the workflow make sense so that we weren't hopping from room to room and running around like a chicken with her head cut off.
Was it more difficult for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was like I learned really quick, like, okay, this is how it's going to be. Like, you know, if the scene is, if there's a setup already ready, you know, and we were planning to do something else, like, I learned really quickly that, you know, it might have to shift and change. So I had to just be very ready and not hold on to, wait, but I thought we were going to do this scene, you know.
And I had preparation, you know, just, you know, in being in this industry and being involved in film and television stuff. You know, Living Color was always like fly by the seat of your pants. You know, you think you're doing this and then something else comes up and you can do that instead. So you just learn to be flexible, you learn to be open, you learn to be prepared, so that if something happens and she's like, oh, you know what, we're not going to shoot this scene today, instead we're doing this, you got to be able to step right in and be there. You can't, you know, say, well, you know what, I didn't prepare for that scene today. You know, there's no room for that.
I'll be in my trailer, give me a call.
Yeah, they're on the trailers.
I'll be under my blanket. That was my trailer, in the corner under the blanket.
Let's talk about prep. How much time did you guys have to prep the film?
I don't do a traditional rehearsal process with readings. I like to do exercises. So I think we did one day with the family, with a psychotherapist friend on the couch with a mock therapy session, and with Adepero and Laura, you know, we had a couple exercises where they went out in costume, and with Adepero and Bina, Asha Davis, we had, you know, the lab where they worshiped the love scene. So it was spread out, but we didn't spend any time like reading lines in rehearsals.
Is that difficult for you guys?
No, I loved it. That's the way I really like to work. That was a dream scenario for me. You know, I'm not like one of those people that like to do a scene over and over again and like to beat the life out of it before you shoot it. You know, I just like to, I just like to go. So that was wonderful.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it's an interesting experience of working on this character for from the short to the film to the feature 3 years, and so Alike was always just kind of there, and like Dee said, during the short, we did a bunch of exercises with me and Pernell Walker, and then the Sundance Lab, and so there was always bits that were happening that kind of led up to the feature, and so and it's great to do exercises because it really solidifies the relationships. As an actor, that has to be clear, and if that is clear, super clear, then it's more than half the battle. Then the lines just come and you just know why you're saying what you're saying, and it just makes sense.
What was your most fun day on the set for each of you?
My most fun day was the day when I got to knock that sandwich out of my husband's hand and let him know that I knew what time it was, that Audrey wasn't quite as dumb as he thought, that I knew that he was tipping. And there was something so satisfying for both Audrey and Kim to just crack, knock that sandwich right out of his hand.
I like the dinner table scene because we got to play with it a little bit, and like Adepero and Sarah had lines that the actors weren't expecting, so we get to play with that. And then we did there's tons of stuff we couldn't put in the film where each of the characters got to do kind of like a riff. So Kim had something about who was out on the phone, and Arf had something about did you write a check, and so you could it was stuff that you could all put in, but it was just so much we had to it was like an embarrassment of riches in the editing room.
Dinner scene was great just because it was like we were all stationary, just kind of bouncing off of each other. It felt like a real family, eating real food. And then the dildo scene, just because it was light and funny, and yeah, I could play around.
You get to walk around
with it, yeah. Brush up against the DP. Yeah, it was fun.